What if everything you thought you knew about Malcolm's death was a lie? What if I told you it wasn't a tragic accident, not even a health scare, but a cold-blooded, calculated murder, hidden beneath red carpet smiles and industry silence? Buckle up, because Pamela Warner just dropped a bombshell so explosive, it's shaking the very foundation of Black Hollywood. Y'all, this ain't just another messy rumor floating on the internet like a bad lace front, no. This is receipts, recordings, and revenge all rolled into one flaming headline. Why was Malcolm kept isolated for months? Who had access to his medications? And why is the same private doctor who cleared his health now nowhere to be found? Pamela isn't staying silent anymore. She's coming for next, and baby, she brought the screenshots, voice notes, and a diary full of names. You thought the scandals were over, please. This is just the trailer. So tell me, why is no one from Malcolm's inner circle speaking up? Why are studios locking down interviews? And most importantly, who's really behind the murder of Malcolm Jamal Warner? Keep watching, because the truth, it's uglier than we imagined. Let's rewind the tape, because this story didn't start with Pamela Warner going public. It started with silence, a silence so thick, so chilling, it practically screamed that something wasn't right. And when it comes to Hollywood, especially Black Hollywood, silence is the most dangerous sound of all. Now here's the setup. Malcolm Jamal Warner, once the charming TV icon of a generation, started slowly disappearing from public life. No red carpets, no interviews, no blurry paparazzi shots. Just vanished. At first, people chalked it up to mental health, privacy, or just taking a break. But Pamela saw the patterns, and baby, they weren't adding up. According to Pamela, it all began when Malcolm started distancing himself from a very powerful, very connected inner circle. People he once trusted with his life, people who benefited from keeping him quiet, isolated, and eventually gone. And if you think Pamela Warner was just some grieving relative looking for attention, you clearly don't know who she is. Pamela is a strategic savage, a quiet observer who waited, collected, and documented everything. And when she finally pulled the trigger to speak out, she didn't come empty-handed. She came with phone logs, coded texts, falsified prescriptions, and y'all, a handwritten letter from Malcolm that literally read, "If anything happens to me, start with Dr. Gerald," and the contract from June 2023. Dr. Gerald, we're gonna get to them. But first, let's talk about that contract. Sources close to Pamela allege that in June 2023, Malcolm was approached with a Shady legacy licensing deal, a quiet little backdoor agreement that would allow a mysterious third party to profit off Malcolm's image, brand, and name posthumously. Yes, you heard that right, posthumously, as in after he's dead. As in, they already had plans. The deal, which Malcolm refused to sign, conveniently reappeared months later. This time with his signature forged. Guess who submitted it to the licensing agency? A man named Byron S., who just so happens to be an assistant to, you guessed it, Dr. Gerald. And before y'all start screaming coincidence, let's talk about the bodyguard who mysteriously disappeared just days after Malcolm's last hospital stay. His name? Antonio Price, last seen in the Dominican Republic with a new identity and an offshore account worth $1.3 million. Connect those dots, please. Pamela's been on a warpath. She started digging, flipping over every rotten stone in Malcolm's life, and what she found could sink careers, studios, and entire medical networks. She claims that Dr. Gerald not only misdiagnosed Malcolm 3 separate times, but also cleared him for a surgery that Malcolm never approved. The anesthesiologist, gone. The nurse who administered his resigned. The hospital footage, corrupted. I mean, come on. This is a plot twist even Shonda Rhimes wouldn't dare write. Let's pause and ask the question we're all thinking. Why would someone want Malcolm dead? Simple: control over his estate, control over his image, and, more importantly, control over the narrative. Malcolm had been quietly working on a memoir titled The Cosby Curse, My Life Uncensored. It was set to expose behind-the-scenes abuse, blacklisting, and a laundry list of elite predators that Hollywood has spent decades protecting. The manuscript was 70% done, and now, And just when we thought Pamela Warner had already dropped the biggest bomb of her life, sis pulled out files. Yes, files, plural. Color-coded, labeled, notarized. Okay, maybe not notarized, but the internet swears they saw the Staples watermark on some of those printouts, because Pamela wasn't just talking anymore. She was investigating, presenting, exposing, and what she revealed next had Malcolm's fans, critics, and even some former co-stars clutching their pearls and logging off in disbelief. So let's start with this now viral document Pamela showed to the camera during her emotional YouTube Live, a private text exchange between Malcolm and a mysterious contact saved only as DC. She claimed this was a producer connected to a major studio that Malcolm had worked with someone who owed him a lot of money. According to Pamela, Malcolm was in the middle of an ongoing royalty dispute for a series he helped write and never got paid for. Pamela said that just 2 weeks before his death, Malcolm told her that he was going to take DC and his partners to court. Now, let's pause. 2 weeks before he dies mysteriously, Malcolm threatens legal action. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all, right? And remember this strange medical report that stated Malcolm's cause of death was a rare cardiovascular reaction to over-the-counter supplements? Pamela wasn't buying it. She zoomed in and pointed out that Malcolm had never taken supplements a day in his life. He didn't even like multivitamins, she said. The man barely took Advil. Then she slammed a photo down in front of the camera, Malcolm lying on a couch, with 3 bottles of mysterious pills next to him. But it gets weirder. Pamela claimed the pill bottles in the photo were planted. How does she know? Because one of them had her name on it. That's right, the prescription bottle had been filled under Pamela Warner's identity, and she swore she never filled it, never saw it, and never even used that pharmacy. Now enter the so-called anonymous whistleblower. Pamela read aloud an email sent to her from someone who claimed to be a former assistant to a television executive Malcolm was feuding with. The email said, "I overheard a call where your son's name came up. They were angry, something about him trying to go public and ruin everything." A voice on the call said, "If he talks, he's done." I didn't know what that meant, but now I do. Chills. Literal chills. And here's the kicker. Malcolm's last phone call wasn't made to a friend, a lawyer, or even to Pamela. It was made to a burner number in Washington, D.C., and no one has been able to trace that call, Pamela claimed she found. This detail while reviewing his phone records she had to fight to get from the phone company, who mysteriously misplaced the original file request twice. At this point, the chat was in shambles. Pamela was trending on X, formerly Twitter. TikTok was lit with justice for Malcolm hashtags. And Reddit? Baby, Reddit had already posted timelines, suspect lists, and conspiracy flowcharts with red string connecting studio logos to mysterious corporations, and then came a voicemail. Pamela reached under her desk and pulled out a CD. Who even uses CDs anymore? That's what made it feel more real, because this wasn't edited, cropped, or filtered. It was old school analog tea. She held up a mini speaker, pressed play, and suddenly the world heard the trembling voice of Malcolm Jamal. "Warner, I don't know how much time I have. They've been watching me. They're already inside the house. If anything happens to me, check my email draft folder. Tell mom ... Tell her to keep fighting." That was it. You could hear Pamela sobbing off camera. You could hear the live chat erupting, but most of all, you could feel the fear Malcolm must have had recording that message, and the rage Pamela must have been carrying all these years, waiting for the moment she could finally scream, "I told you all this wasn't natural." But folks, buckle up, because just when Pamela thought she had uncovered the worst of it, an unmarked package showed up at her doorstep. No return address, just a USB, and what was on it? And just when you thought this Hollywood horror script couldn't get more twisted, Pamela Warner did the unthinkable. She dropped the second half of Malcolm's voice recordings, and baby, they weren't just whispers in the dark. They were a full-blown scream for help. In this final video of the unraveling disaster, let's pick up right where we left off. Pamela is sitting on her late husband's favorite armchair, holding his old iPad, and hitting play on a file titled, "They're After Me." Final log. The audio was rough, shaky, but unmistakably Malcolm's voice came through, sounding weak and panicked. "If anything happens to me, look into the producers. The ones from the revival meetings, they're not who they say they are. Pamela paused the recording, looked directly into the camera, and said one thing that sent the internet into a frenzy. This wasn't a heart attack. This was an execution, and y'all better stop playing dumb. Yes, she said that within minutes. Fans, conspiracy theorists, and even Malcolm's old co-stars started reposting, stitching, and commenting. Twitter, or should we say X, exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForMalcolm, #WhoKilledWarner, and the chillingly viral #PamelaKnew.now. And guess who that studio was allegedly tied to? A certain gospel-based media company with heavy political donors, shady shell accounts, and zero transparency. Oh, but it gets juicier. One of the execs on that board? A man who sat on the advisory panel of a so-called faith-based rehab program. The same one Malcolm checked into weeks before he died. Pamela was connecting dots that no one in the press dared to print. But she went live, unfiltered, unbothered, and unafraid. She said she saw falsified hospital paperwork and called out 3 nurses by name who conveniently transferred departments the day after Malcolm's death. Even TMZ had to step back and say, this one's too hot to handle. Meanwhile, back in the real world, fans started holding candlelight protests outside major studio offices. Some even staged sit-ins at Christian conferences Malcolm had once spoken at. The sentiment was clear: we want answers. But here's the wildest twist of all. Pamela received a cease and desist letter the next morning. It came from a high-powered legal team claiming to represent the Warner estate. Baby, Pamela is the Warner estate. She clapped back live, waving the paper in the air like a flag of defiance, saying, "Nice try. Y'all forged my signature. That's not even my handwriting. And by the way, Malcolm's last will, I have it." And he named names. She claimed the real will, the one not sanitized by lawyers, was handwritten by Malcolm 3 days before his death, stored in a fireproof box under their bed. In it, he allegedly stated he feared he was being followed and that if anything happened to him, the people involved were deeply connected to the Christian entertainment industry, corrupt at the top, and just like that, Pamela started naming names. She didn't hold back on her live broadcast that drew over 2.7 million viewers in 24 hours. She exposed a pastor turned producer who tried to force Malcolm into signing over story rights. A celebrity therapist who diagnosed Malcolm without ever meeting Hyman, a spiritual advisor who allegedly told Malcolm he was being punished for exposing too much truth suddenly. Every outlet from The Breakfast Club to CNN was talking about it. Not because they wanted to, but because Pamela had pulled receipts that couldn't be ignored, voicemails, emails, video clips. Even a hotel lobby surveillance tape of Malcolm getting into a black SUV the last time he was seen alive. On his own, and where did that SUV belong to? A private transport company owned by the same media firm that tried to buy Malcolm's silence. Do you see the pattern yet? Pamela's words were clear, haunting, and unforgettable. My husband died trying to wake y'all up. I'm not gonna let them bury his truth like they buried his body. As lawsuits pile up, investigations quietly begin behind the scenes, and media execs start resigning for personal reasons. The world is finally starting to ask the one question Pamela's been shouting from the rooftops: was Malcolm Jamal Warner murdered to protect an empire of lies? And as the credits of this tragic tale start rolling, Pamela isn't stepping away. No ma'am, she's writing a book, she's launching a documentary series, and insiders say she's planning to sue every network that blackballed her husband's truth, because for Pamela Warner, this isn't just about justice. It's about war. Y'all, take a breath, because if this story didn't make your jaw hit the floor, you might need to check your pulse. We just walked through fake clinics, whispered voicemail confessions, deleted Instagram lives, a missing car, and one woman, Pamela Warner, who said no more silence. So now I gotta ask, if this wasn't murder, then what was it? A coincidence? A divine accident? Or something planned, executed, and covered up with smiles and funeral programs? We've seen too much now. The pills, the fake doctors, the car that was never searched. If Malcolm Jamal Warner's death doesn't get reinvestigated after all this, who's really pulling the strings in Hollywood? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Pamela? Should the police reopen the case? Is this bigger than one man's tragic end? Smash that like button if your third eye is wide open right now. Subscribe for more exclusive receipts and deep dives they don't want you to hear. And turn those notifications on because, baby, we're not done yet. Next episode, Pamela's final voice memo, and you won't believe who's crying on the other end of the line.